Broadcasting from Silicon Valley, California, this is Conversations with Jennylyn.
Do you believe in aliens and UFOs? Have you ever gone to the moon? Would you like to go to the moon? Would you like to send something to the moon? Today, I have two fascinating people to share with you, and they both have a lot to say about this. In fact, one of them has sent something to the moon, and I cannot wait to share them with you. My first guest is Nova Spivack, and he is a serial entrepreneur, and he will tell us why he's on this show shortly. And Jamie Smale. Now, that's good coffee. And he will tell us why I am introducing him with a coffee label. So welcome to the show, gentlemen.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
So I met Jamie because he's helping me with my SEOs. And one day in conversation, I just found out that he is fascinated with aliens, with the moon, with UFOs. And Nova, I know that you have had something special you've done with the whole moon project. And so why don't we start with you? Tell us what you did that involves the moon.
Okay. Well, I flew to the edge of space in 1999, and then that was an interesting project. We paid the Russian Air Force to fly us in their test flight systems. So we got to go and fly and do some interesting things there. And then later, in 2018, we sent a backup of the Isaac Asimov Foundation trilogy on a little quartz crystal. It was etched into it in the glove compartment of Elon Musk's Tesla, which is now orbiting the sun for about 50 million years. And then we sent a backup of the Wikipedia and thousands of books to the moon with SpaceIL in 2019, but it crashed. It was in a metal disc, a special metal disc that we manufactured. But the spacecraft crashed, so this is now sort of a shipwreck somewhere on the moon containing the Wikipedia. And this was all done through my nonprofit foundation, the Arc Mission Foundation.
What is it called?
The Arc Mission Foundation, ARCH, like archive. And we're archiving and backing up critical human history and culture and putting it in locations around the solar system, including on Earth, but also off-site locations to make sure that it's never lost, no matter what happens.
That's awesome. I can't wait to have you share more about this with us. Jamie.
Yeah.
What did you want to add to this? Do you have anything you want to add to the whole moon? I know you have a fascination with it.
Yeah. Well, what I would like to say is I think it's amazing what Nova's done, because I've often thought, and I'm not alone in thinking this, but the human species, we are in danger of ceasing to exist. It happened to the dinosaurs, so like nothing's forever. There's a number of ways in which we can become extinct. So preserving human knowledge, I think, is so important. And if ever we find ourselves in dire straits and we have to rebuild human society or whatever, even if there's just some kind of footprint left by humanity as to everything we've ever learned and all the knowledge we had, I just think it's a wonderful thing. I do.
Thank you. Yeah. There are different reasons for doing this archive. Certainly one of them is in case of some kind of near-term accident, war, extinction level, environmental damage, something that wipes us out. That's in the near term. That could happen. The threat of nuclear war is higher than it's ever been, actually. According to the Bureau of Atomic Scientists, with the doomsday clock, it's closer to striking 12 than it's ever been. But we have many other threats now with global warming and other issues around the world, including the rise of pandemics and other things which could potentially threaten to wipe us out. or set us back. And then if you look at longer term timescales, on the anywhere from hundreds of thousands to millions of years, it's virtually guaranteed that there'll be a large comet or meteor impact. We're actually overdue for one. They happen regularly on those time scales, and eventually, it's 100% certain that one will be large enough to, alter the atmosphere enough to cause another great extinction, similar to the one that caused, or we think caused, the extinction of the dinosaurs. And so, since we know that will definitely happen, certainly within the next million years or so, it's certain that on geological timescales, we won't be here in the distant future. But that's still a short amount of time when it comes to, geological history and the history of life on Earth. So even though we on Earth might have some event which wipes us out, with time, it's likely that something else will evolve and could become intelligent in millions of years after that, which is still just a blink of an eye in geological time. And so the question is, can we leave anything for them? So there's the near-term case where we need it to rebuild ourselves because we still exist, but somehow we're in a primitive state. The other scenario is, we get wiped out, and in the very distant future, there's someone else here, our descendants, something new that evolved, maybe something that came from outside our solar system. But that civilization eventually might find these records that we leave for them, and first of all, learn about us, and secondly, maybe benefit from knowing about what we did wrong or what we did right. And so essentially, this archive, because of the material that we're building it in, which is super long lasting, is definitely going to be one of the longest lasting, and if not the only, record of our civilization when you think about millions or billions of years of time.
Thank you, Nova. Jamie, do you want to add to this?
No, I just think it's fantastic. And, human knowledge has been lost before. And why reinvent the wheel if we can leave something behind? And yes, I agree with Nova. I mean, you look at near-Earth objects, what do they call them? NEOs, is it? I don't know. But the record, NEOs, yeah. And we're only aware of like a tiny fraction of them. I mean, we're volatile here in space. Anything can happen. It can happen rather quickly as well. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think that it's important. And some people listening may say, and I've heard this, and you probably heard this as well, Nova. People say, "Oh, why don't we take care of the Earth? Why are we looking up to space? Why don't we sort out our problems here on Earth?" And I've never really understood that, because I can see where they're coming from, but why can't we do both? There's 8 billion people here on the Earth. I don't see why we can't have our cake and eat it. Yes, we do need to sort out our problems on the Earth, but why not put some investment and some time and some knowledge into space and what we can do there.
Yeah, of course. And by doing this project, while we are backing stuff up for the future, there are some benefits to people today who participate. And a good analogy for this, if you think about the building of the Gothic cathedrals, they were 100-year time projects. To build and complete a Gothic cathedral could take 100 years or longer. And it actually involved the whole community around it in the construction and the artwork, and the project actually had a long-term goal, but it had an economic and cultural benefit for families and artisans and people constructing these cathedrals, and the whole community participated. So in a similar way, by participating in this and putting your own information in it and supporting it, you're making a future monument, something that may be world heritage in the future. You're one of the builders. You get to participate in doing that. So imagine if you could help build a pyramid, or you could have a piece of Noah's Ark for your stuff. Imagine you had that opportunity. That's what this says.
Yeah. That's brilliant.
So Nova, I want to ask you, what is your organization doing currently to continue to store documents or send stuff into space? And are you still working with Elon Musk? How about Bezos? Are you working with any of these people? Because You know, we hear he's going into space soon. So I'm just wondering if you are involved in any way with them.
So the Arc Mission Foundation, you can learn more about it at www.arcmission.org. Arc is ARCH, so www.arcmission.org is a nonprofit in the U.S. that is making a backup of planet Earth and continuously maintaining and updating and propagating this backup into more locations with more data. And so we've done 4 successful missions to space, one orbiting the sun, one presently on the moon, one that was putting the Wikipedia on a CubeSat orbiting the Earth a couple years ago, and we also did one mission with Bezos's Blue Origin. We did a mission with SpaceX, and we did a mission with Blue Origin. So we have in the past collaborated or at least been part of missions that were launched by SpaceX and Blue Origin. We are not currently formally working with SpaceX or Blue Origin, but we've flown on their missions. In the near future, in 2022, we will be landing another attempt, second version of the Lunar Library on the moon, and that's going to be flying with Astrobotic and on a NASA mission to the moon. So that'll be landing in 2022, and we've already made and shipped the payload, which is, again, a bunch of disks containing all of this information again. And the disks are made of nickel metal, and the data is actually etched as tiny little pictures like microfilm into the disks, as well as some additional layers that are digital like DVDs, but it's all in metal. So this metal, you know, nickel's an element, it just lasts forever. And on the moon, nothing disturbs it. So as long as nothing impacts it, it'll be there for a very, very long time, possibly as long as the moon, which could be another 6 billion years. Now, as well as that mission, we're partnering with others on a bunch of other missions. So we're partnering with Galactic Legacy Labs, GLL, on a mission called the Luna Prize, where they are letting people send their own photos and their own information on a mission along with the Arc mission to the moon, future landing. So that's also being worked on, where people can put their own photo albums and family memories and other wishes and things and send a piece of their legacy as well. So that's also happening and moving forward. And then we have a number of other initiatives. So the Arc mission is working with some major museums now, and we're building some exhibits about some of our work. So more will be announced about that in the future. And we're partnering with a number of organizations. We have some announcements coming up soon about some very interesting special things that we'll be sending with us that'll be traveling in the Arc Mission Foundation's libraries to the moon on our next landings. So there should be some really interesting new things that we're doing. And I'll also mention we don't have any tardigrades on these missions, just in case anybody was wondering. No tardigrades. We're sending tribbles this time. Tribbles.
What did you say, Jamie?
Oh no, I was just wondering. In the next 5 or 6 years, there's a lot of talk of colonizing Mars, and so I imagine, Nova, that's your next. You know, that you probably want to get some stuff on there, right?
Well, yes, that's in our roadmap for sure. Yeah, it's definitely on our roadmap to send archives to Mars as well. As soon as anybody is going there and gives us some space. As a nonprofit, everything we do is based on donations. So, as well as having somebody give us space on one of their missions to add these disks, we have to make the disks, and there's some costs involved. So it typically costs us, about $500,000 to about $1 million per payload when we have all the costs of curation and manufacturing and the payload and anything else to support the mission. In total, per payload, it's approximately that much, and that we have to raise from sponsors and donations for each mission. And so we have a roadmap that takes us to orbital locations and surface locations of a number of the different planets, moons, but also key orbital locations in the solar system, such as Lagrangian points where you can actually put something and it'll just remain there forever. So we can place these archives like Easter eggs, like a treasure hunt around the solar system. And then by having enough of them we can guarantee that there'll always be at least some remaining. You know, even if big parts of the solar system are destroyed, there'll still be a couple of these left. But also that you can find them in different places, in particular on the Earth itself. So putting them into deep caves, for example, or bunkers or other locations, is another strategy to make them accessible on Earth as well. I mean, it's nice to have them in space, but you know, if you're knocked back to primitive time, you know, you won't be able to get to the ones that are in space. In that case, you need them on Earth. Many locations is the key, just like any other backup strategy.
Fascinating.
It's very fascinating.
Glad. I'm so glad we're doing this. Nova, I did not realize you're still doing this.
Still goes on.
Something that you were involved in earlier in your life, and then you started working on new companies, and
this one just keeps on chugging. You know, in the background, we're always working on it. It's a long-term, project that'll continue, long after I'm gone, and hopefully just keep going. Hopefully the organization, finds the sponsor who gives us enough money to, continue to just do this on a nonprofit basis forever. Because that's the only way it really works as a backup strategy, is if it has enough money to be essentially independently able to just keep curating and delivering updates to these locations. If that function can operate and independently and sustainably, then we can essentially guarantee that there's a planetary insurance policy in place. And this will also include, and has already included, some DNA from organisms. And so backing up DNA is also important, not just the information technology, that knowledge, but also the result of evolution, which is millions of years of work as well to back that up. Seeds and other organisms.
Jennylyn, may I ask Nova a question? Because I'm very curious.
Go for it.
It's a rare opportunity to talk to a man like you, Nova. But okay, so what I'm wondering is, like, let's say that these Easter eggs, as you described them, are discovered in the future, and not even necessarily by humans. Could be another intelligent civilization or race. What kind of technology is required for them to decipher these discs and to have the knowledge? And is it possible that that they'll look at it and not be able to get that knowledge? I mean, what's the technology required?
Great.
Yeah, that's a good question, and it's something that we spend a lot of time on. So if you think about the possible audiences for this material in the future over very long time scales, it can include, our civilization, descendants, human organisms that are like humans or similar to humans that evolved on Earth in the future. It might involve intelligent life that evolved in other places in the solar system or from outside the solar system, right? That could eventually find this. If you think of all those different possible, life forms that might find this, there's a wide variety, let's say, of possible forms that those life forms could be in. They might be large or small. They might have sense organs like ours or very different. And their brains and their thinking and their language would be very likely to be quite different. So how do we give them information and then make it something that they can interpret? If you think about it, there were many civilizations and languages on Earth that have been lost. And in some cases, it wasn't until the discovery of codices like the Rosetta Stone, which actually showed side by side different languages and enabled the first translations to happen between certain lost languages. So with this archive, we need to provide a kind of a Rosetta Stone that's built in, that helps somebody who finds it figure out what it's all meaning, what it's all about. And since we don't know any language that they're going to have in the future, how do we make all of this stuff like the Wikipedia understandable to them at all? Right? It's just a bunch of symbols, right? Different letters and different languages. What does it all mean? How are they going to interpret that? So as well as the Wikipedia and all these books and all this knowledge, we had to build our own Rosetta Stone. And what we decided to do was start with pictures. So we start with a visual dictionary of about 1 million different pictures And next to each picture, things in the picture are labeled in 5 languages, right? So a picture of someone's kitchen, you know, table, chair, toaster oven, blender, stove, refrigerator, in 5 languages. So each of these things in the picture is labeled. Then we have dictionaries for languages and translations between those languages. So we have about 1 billion translations between hundreds of languages. So from those symbols, you can go to 5 major languages, from the pictures to 5 major languages, and then from there to every language that's known. And so that system, which teaches you from simple pictures, 5 major languages, what these things mean, using at least something that we hope these people in the future, whoever they are, can refer to, which are pictures. I mean, they can see a picture which shows some people and some trees and houses, and if they have eyes at least, you know, they may be able to like make some sense of what that might be. Oh yeah, those are dwellings on a planet with some plants and some creatures next to it, and you know, this is what they're called. Once they can build that baseline knowledge of this sort of consensus knowledge around 1 million or so concepts, that they can connect to something they understand, they can go from those pictures to their language, you know, and so that way, using that, it's like the key, which then lets them understand everything else in the archive. So we built that actually, and the way we did it was we took all the existing visual dictionaries, visual encyclopedias that have been made that we could get access to. We included those, and then we included huge encyclopedias and dictionaries of languages and the translations between them. So all of that stuff we curated to create this kind of what we call a primer that teaches you or enables you to learn what all of this stuff means.
This is terrific.
It is.
But
So what I can't wrap my head around, Nova, is how do you know exactly where these have been placed? Is there a way to track exactly where they are? And how?
yeah, well, in the case of the one that Elon Musk delivered, you know, we know exactly the orbit and the trajectory of his Tesla orbiting the sun. So we know exactly, we know that for at least 50 million years, it's not going to collide with anything, any planet or anything. It's going to keep going for at least 50 million years circling the sun. It might actually go for longer, but the math just isn't, it gets less accurate as you calculate. So after about 50 million years, we just can't be certain what will happen anymore. For the one on the moon, right now, we know where it crashed. So there's an impact zone. We don't know where it is relative to that impact zone, or if it even survived it. We did a big study with a lot of scientists to try to calculate if it might have survived the crash. And according to all of our computation, it's very likely that it survived the crash because of what it was made of and where it was located in the spacecraft. You know, it was a solid piece of flexible metal that, you know, in an impact might have easily been just thrown, you know, rather than destroyed. It might have just been thrown away from the site down field, you know, some distance, maybe kilometers away, perhaps. But it may be there intact as a piece of debris. It may have been shattered, but even if that was the case, a lot of the information would be recoverable because it's literally etched into it like broken pottery, but made out of metal. Or it could have been completely vaporized, completely destroyed. It's not so likely because nickel has a very high melting point. So it's not so likely that it was vaporized or, you know, atomized. It's probably there either intact or in pieces. Where? Within a certain distance of the zone where the impact happened on the moon. We know exactly where that is. But we don't precisely know where it is. Now, the next one hopefully doesn't have such a rough landing. And then we'll know exactly where it is because it'll be in the spacecraft sitting there on the moon undisturbed, you know, for a long time. You know,
So when one of these machines crash, that's money down the drain when you have a crash.
Yeah. Yeah, that was you know, that was 10 years of work and lots of money sort of down the drain. Although it is on the moon.
Okay.
We did land it. It's there. We just don't know exactly what condition it's in. But we did actually get it there, which is an accomplishment. However, we're sending it again, just to be sure.
That's great.
Yeah, that will also make us, I think, the only organization that's ever landed anything on the moon twice.
Woohoo! Kudos to you guys. Jamie, do you want to add anything or ask Nova any other questions?
Oh, millions probably. We probably have time for all the questions I have.
Go ahead.
But yeah, I mean, actually, this is rather off topic, but you know, you've been to space, Nova, so I'm just very personally curious to ask you what was that like, because I'll probably never talk to anyone again who's been to space. So yeah, tell me all about it.
Well, there may be more and more people who've been to space as years go on, as it becomes commercialized. I flew suborbitally to the edge of space, to suborbital flight uh, in uh, Russia in what was it, 1999, early days, in a MiG-25, which is a fighter jet that's designed to shoot down spy planes, so it goes very, very high. Short amount of fuel, small amount of fuel, but very high altitude flight. So essentially got almost vertical and went, out of the atmosphere, and then
Wow.
circled back and kind of fell back in. And that was a very intense experience. First of all, we were flying at about Mach 3, 3 times the speed of sound. There were a lot of G forces, very intense. Many times the force of gravity because of our um, acceleration and any change of velocity or anything caused a lot of G forces. So as you're climbing and you're fighting against gravity, you're feeling these G forces. So it's very physically intense. It's very hot because when you fly that fast, the plane heats up, and as you get higher, there's no atmosphere to filter out the sun, so it's super hot. It's very uncomfortable, quite intense experience. However, the view is really phenomenal. So of course, when you get up there, you do see the curvature of the Earth, and the sky becomes black, even though it's daytime. And I saw all of Western Europe and Eastern Europe, and you're definitely way up there. I mean, I went to almost 4 times the altitude of a commercial jet, so quite high.
How long was that?
That flight, the whole thing was only probably about 2 hours in total, going up and coming back. And part of it is you just have to fly to a certain area before you can really go up because of the sonic booms that it causes. You have to fly away from populated areas. So, you take off, you fly to a certain zone, then it really kicks in and you go up. And then you come back down, you fly back. And so that whole experience, was incredibly intense. Great view. And
Would you do it again?
no, I don't think so.
Really?
Once was
Is that
enough.
because of the physical
Yeah, it was dangerous and uncomfortable. And it's not going to be different the second time. So,
right?
I got a great experience. I lived through it. I wouldn't mind going back to space someday, but maybe not that way. Maybe a much more
Yeah.
comfortable trip would be preferable. Going in the MiG-25 and having at least some risk of not making it back from a trip like that, really makes you sort of think, well, boy, was I dumb when I was 20. Uh,
So I take it you were afraid.
it was scary. Yeah, it was really intense. Yeah. But it was fun. I mean, it was an amazing experience. But yeah, really, really intense. And I did zero gravity training as well in a different type of test flight in an Ilyushin 76, often known as the Vomit Comet, or the Russian version of the Vomit Comet, which is a big airplane with no seats. It's a cargo plane, and they fly way up and then they dive, and the walls and the floors and ceiling are all padded. So when it dives, you're floating, and you're literally in zero gravity, just like if you were on the moon. And you can bounce and walk around and float, because when if you're, let's say you're in an elevator and the elevator's falling and free fall and you're floating, from your perspective, there's no gravity, right? Just like on the moon, it's the same thing. The moon is actually falling around the Earth, and that is why you have very little gravity there. The moon itself doesn't have a lot of mass compared to the Earth. There's 1/6 the gravity of the Earth on the moon. And similarly, this plane does that, goes up and it falls with you in it. And there you can experience microgravity. So depending on how it falls, its trajectory down, you might experience zero gravity or moon gravity or Mars gravity. So you can try these different, based on the parabola of its trajectory, you can try these different kinds of gravities and experience that. So we did that. That was a lot of fun. That was definitely not as scary. It was
Well,
also intense.
yeah, I get car sick, so I don't
Oh
think
yeah.
I do.
Now we got super nauseous. Everybody was sick as
Yeah.
super sick.
I can't go on a roller coaster even.
No. You would
So
not want to go on a parabolic flight. That's a super nauseating experience, but it's really cool. After a couple parabolas, you're really trying not to puke.
Yeah, you don't want to have breakfast on the morning before you
Yeah,
go,
you
mate.
don't fly with anybody who's a puker. No, because
Oh
that
man,
might be a problem.
yeah.
When you went on these missions, Nova, how many people were a part of it?
Well, on the test flight, it was just me and the pilot. But some other people also flew, but separate flights. And then on the microgravity, there was probably 5 or 6 of us together, and we actually started a company based on that called Zero Gravity Corporation, which was acquired by Space Adventures. So kind of we were among the early space tourists and also the early space entrepreneurs, decades before Elon or Richard Branson for that matter.
Listen up, guys. They were ahead of you.
Listen, while Bezos was sitting in his one-room office at his crappy desk, I was flying to space. Unfortunately, he not only caught up, but he exceeded my progress substantially in following years. But I had a decent lead. At one point, I was ahead of him.
Well, while he started one company, you started like 100.
Well, no, I didn't start 100 companies, but he definitely started a very successful company. Yeah.
Yeah, hats off to him.
Yeah.
Jamie, did you want to ask Nova another question?
Oh, no, yeah, I mean, probably, but I hope that we'll talk again. But I don't want to like take up all your time, Jennylyn. So I think you wanted to ask about, I think you wanted to discuss like aliens and UFOs. Because
Yes.
that's what you
Oh,
said.
okay.
So Jamie has a fascination with aliens and UFOs. Nova, have you had experience with either?
Um, well, that's an interesting question. I have had some experiences which are interesting, but I don't really know how to classify them. Um, you know, uh, I have traveled to some remote parts of the world and seen some unusual lights in the sky, and things that might have been UFOs or might have been satellites. Just don't know. Have I seen one close up? No. I've seen a lot of anecdotal evidence. There's a lot of evidence from people's own photos and documented cases. And as you may know, the U.S. government recently did a report where they didn't rule out the existence of UFOs. They weren't able to say for sure, at least in that report, that they could confirm they were from non-terrestrial origin. But they didn't say they weren't either. And that's either because they don't know or they can't say, or maybe they are not from non-terrestrial origin. They could be something made here by governments, or maybe there's some other advanced civilization we just don't know about somehow that's already on Earth. It's possible. In any case, the evidence is good. It's strong evidence by trained observers like pilots, military pilots. So you can't discount it. There's also a lot of FAA radar data and other data from unusual radar signatures of objects that just move in ways that we don't have any capability to reproduce today with our technology. As well as that, there are some unusual anomalies on the planet itself that archaeologically have been found. And these include images of what appear to be extraterrestrials in ancient sites carved onto monuments and onto other artworks. You can see things that look like aliens on some of them. Some equipment, there's legends, for example, of the Vimanas in the Hindu ancient scriptures, which are these flying discs and vehicles, advanced vehicles. There's also tribes such as the Dogon, which have ancient oral traditions saying they came from Sirius, the constellation, a star in the constellation of Sirius. You have in Mexico and in Mongolia and other parts of the world, archaeological ruins, sculptures, carvings, pictures that appear to be UFOs, that appear to be aliens. They're very classic, gray, the eyes. All of that stuff has been found, and many, many times. There's too much of it in too many different places for it to be all fake. There's just a vast amount of this stuff. And sure, I'm sure there's a lot of hoaxes and fake stuff, but you find quite a bit of this real archaeological stuff, well documented in so many cases, South America, in many other locations. And so there is, even in the Bible, stories or records of the Nephilim. The Sumerians have ancient tablets where they talk about this. Even the Egyptians have some records where they saw flying things in the sky. Alexander the Great saw flying shields fly over above his army. Native Americans have concepts of flying shields, and so do the indigenous people of outer parts of China, such as in Tibet, and the borders in India and the Himalayas. So pretty much all over the world, every single different a group of people has some experiences in their history, present or past, on this. So if you look at the preponderance of evidence, there's so much of it, and there's so many similarities cross-culturally, and also some of these objects you can date. They're old; they're thousands of years old at least. And then you couple that with some strange skeletons that have been found.
Yeah.
The skeletons are really, really bizarre. There's been some skulls and other things too. The jury's still out on whether or not it's human DNA or not human DNA, but they sure don't look human.
Right.
So, what can we say? I mean, scientifically, I don't think there's any real conclusion, but it's very clear that there's enough evidence that there's something going on. It's not some modern phenomena that was invented, by bored people since the 50s. It's been going on for thousands of years.
And I think that's why they call them UFOs, because they can't identify them.
Correct. And also, there's a whole area, you probably know this popular TV show Ancient Aliens, which I've actually been on a couple times as a guest. That's looking at this historical evidence of UFOs, and there's really a lot of it. But there's also, of course, all the modern current sightings and investigations with social media and camera phones. There's a ton of those, people everywhere, sending them in every day. So right now, it appears that there might be an increase in sightings. Now that may actually just be because we have more phones and cameras around, and it's the same amount there always were, but we're just recording them now. Or there really could be an increase. That's an interesting and important question. If there is actually an increase in frequency, why? Why are they more? Why is it now happening more frequently? And one hypothesis is, ever since the dawn of nuclear testing, they've been showing up and studying our nuclear sites and weapon systems and trying to warn us. That's one hypothesis. They've been trying to warn us about the dangers of this technology, and maybe somehow it's interfering with their safety in some way. We don't know where they live, or are they in another dimension, or do they live underwater? Why do they care what happens on Earth? But it may be that for whatever reason they don't want us to nuke our planet, and so they may be showing up to warn us, or to try to prevent us from harming ourselves. That's one theory. Another theory is they're just scientists studying us. And then of course there's all the different other conspiracy theories about why they might be here. From good kind of beneficial stories of like them wanting to help us to them, farming us for some nefarious purpose. All these things are possible, but what I think is that now that the U.S. government has officially said we need to start cataloging and reporting and collecting this information, the atmosphere may improve so that people feel safer reporting this, and we'll start getting more data, and maybe we can get some answers in the next decade or two.
Jamie, you can't wait to say your bit about this. Go for it.
Oh no, I'm riveted on what Nova has to say here. That's very interesting. But it is a really interesting time right now because of this whole big thing with the Pentagon disclosure to Congress, and well, I mean, it's not new because we've had like drip feeds of disclosure for like forever. I mean, there's been all declassified UFO files all along, but I think this is a big event and the media are taking a big interest in it. But what I thought was interesting, like kind of listening to them and watching the interviews on the news, is that like they will not say, and I don't believe they'll say for a long time, that they could be extraterrestrial, but they kind of really do allude to it because they when you listen to them, they're trying to like tell you how unlikely it is that it's Russian or Chinese technology or some foreign adversary. You know, for example, like this Tic Tac UFO has been monitored for 75 years. You know, so even if like by some far-fetched reason they were so advanced today, have they been so for 75 years? I don't think so. And like they really don't think that they are that advanced that they could create this like secret military technology. So if you do a process of elimination, it's like it's looking more and more likely. I mean, this stuff is crazy advanced. There's no visible propulsion. It's just like it's like magic. It's just they disappear, and it's just crazy technology.
Yeah,
I don't know how we can have it.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah,
totally.
Yeah, you agree? Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, how this technology emerged and how we're going to even understand it if we find any is also another very interesting question. And has it influenced our development already? There's some people think that certain technologies that we actually have were accelerated by recovering certain items.
So guys, can you believe we've been doing this for 45 minutes? So here's what I'm going to declare on this segment. We are going to have a part 2 because this is so fascinating, and a lot of what Nova has shared, I think what your nonprofit is doing is really terrific. But before I wrap up the show, I'd like to tell my friends why we are calling Jamie Now That's Good Coffee. Jerry, do you want to share why I introduced you with this title? And then I'll wrap.
Oh, certainly. Yeah. Okay. Because I've recently started my own coffee brand, and so I'm building a site. So how Jennylyn and how we met is that for the longest time I've been in digital marketing, which I still am. But I've just started a project called Now That's Good Coffee. So I'm building that up, and I love coffee. I'm a coffee enthusiast myself. So, it's good fun. So I'm trying to build that brand at the moment. So I thought, let's,
No, that's good coffee.
Yeah. Right.
You can find details
of
Now That's Good Coffee on my website. If you're interested in learning more about Jamie's coffee, it will be on my website. Before we wrap, Nova, what do you want to leave with the viewers before we do segment 2?
Well, check out lunaprize.com if you'd like to send your own photos and history to the moon on a future mission, because that's how individuals can participate.
Oh, this is great. Thank you. And Jamie, what's your final message for the viewers?
Oh, wow. I hadn't premeditated that one. I'm not sure.
I got one for you, Jamie.
Yeah, go on. Tell me.
Boycott water. Only drink coffee.
Yeah, that.
Thank you so much for watching Conversations with Jennylyn. When a conversation is all you need to be inspired, and wow, if you weren't inspired by these two gentlemen, especially Nova, and the guts to do what he did, then I don't know what it will take to inspire you. But sit back and wait, because I will be bringing these gentlemen back soon to bring and share updates for you. And I will see you next time. Thank you for continuing to watch my show.
Thank you.
Broadcasting from Silicon Valley, California, this is Conversations with Jennylyn.